everyone, I am excited for today's video because I think it's going to be both helpful and fun. But what I wanted to talk about is what cut and come again flowers are, why they're great. Well, they're great for any garden, but especially smaller gardens where you have limited space. And I'll give you a tour of my favorite cut and come again flowers in my garden and show you how to harvest them. So first, I want to go over some terminology. So cut and come again flowers. Generally, what that means is that as you harvest the flowers from the plant, that's going to encourage the plant to produce more flowers. Typically that happens because wherever you make a cut, it encourages branching, and those branches form more flowers. Not all flowers do that though. The other terminology is just cut flower. So a cut flower basically just means it's a flower that's been cut off of a plant to use for decorative purposes. So they don't mean the same thing. And the reason I want to highlight that is because part of what I want to do in today's video is go over some of the tips in this book. So this book is just called the Encyclopedia of Cut Flowers, what flowers to buy, when to buy them, and how to keep them alive longer. But just because something is used as a cut flower doesn't mean it is also a cut and come again flower. For example, I think tulips are in this book, and if you cut off a tulip, another tulip flower isn't going to grow. So I just wanted to highlight those two differences in phrases so that you know what I'm talking about. Now, I haven't read this yet, but what I did do is go through and skim like the plant type to see which ones I have, and then I went ahead and put in a little sticky note there. Not all of these are ones I'm going to go through, but they are all at least flowers that I have in my garden. So why I love cut and come again flowers specifically is that, well, you can harvest them and the plant will keep making flowers. And that is so great, especially in small gardens, because I can grow, let's say I grow one zinnia plant, and maybe it takes up like 9 inches by 9 inches of space, or 8 by 8 inches in the garden. Less than that because I give it less space. But let's say that's how much space I gave it. I can get at least 20 flowers from that one plant throughout the entire season. And that might be lowballing it. So my zinnias will usually start blooming sometime in early June. They are really just starting to kick off now, and then they will bloom until last frost. So I actually did a test last year. I will try to insert the reel here if I can figure out how to download it and insert it. But basically, I cut off all of the zinnias on every single plant in my front center raised bed. So there were no flowers left. 3 days, it started blooming again, and by a week later, 7 days later, it looked the exact same as it did before. So it is important when you do have cut and come again flowers to continue harvesting if you want it to continue producing. And over time, I really have started to favor that in my garden because I do love being able to make bouquets, and I've given less space to flowers that aren't like that. So for example, I do have my single stem sunflowers. Those will produce one really large bloom at the top. They don't bloom the entire season, just a short period of time. And then if I were to cut that off, there are like tiny blooms that form lower down, but it's not like it's gonna keep producing sunflowers. And if that is also taking up like 8 inches by 8 inches, you know, I'm dedicating that much space in my garden for one flower versus 20 plus. So for me, that math makes sense. So what I wanna do is I will take you around my garden. I will show you my favorite cut and come again flowers. I think most of them are at the point where I can at least harvest one flower to show you how to do that. And then we will go through this book and see if there's any additional tips for those flowers. Most of my zinnias are on the front deck, so that is where we are right now. There are some bees enjoying them, so I will not bother the ones that the bees are on. But the way that you can tell if a zinnia is ready to harvest, because each of these flowers, there'll be something a little bit different about them, but you want to do what's called a wiggle test. So you come in here, grab a little bit lower on the stem, and give it a wiggle. If it kind of all moves as one piece, so the stem feels pretty stiff like this one, that means it is ready to harvest. Let's see if we can find maybe this smaller one right here. So if I were to, yeah, see how floppy that is? So if it is wiggling a lot like this, it is not yet ready to harvest. If it is staying pretty stiff, then it is ready to harvest. So how do we go about doing that? Now this part will be similar for a lot of the cut and come again flowers, but essentially what you want to do is follow the stem down until you see some branching. So I wouldn't want to cut it right here because, well, one, that would be a really short stem, but two, there's no branching happening right there. If I come down here though, following that down, getting that little leaf out of the way, there is where you can see two new branches coming off. So by cutting this flower, that is telling the zinnia plant to produce more flowers in order to reproduce, and these will then become flowers. So this plant will become bushier over time as I do this. Now you can do it right there. If you want a longer stem, you can even go down to the next one. So if you go down a little bit further, that leaf that I was pushing out of the way, actually I'm moving you in closer to see that, but so this is where you have the first branching, and then coming down here is where you have the second branching. So this is really up to you and the length of stem that you need. When you cut a longer stem, that is going to encourage longer stems coming off of the plant. For me though, that's not a huge issue. I think a lot of people who grow these professionally, they want the longer stems. I'm using these for me and for my giveaway bouquets, which are small, so I don't need really long stems. So for me, I'm just gonna go down right above that first V of branches and do a snip. And there we have one of the zinnias, and this one is the Queen Lime Blush. Now at this point too, I will also remove the leaves. Some plants are easier to do that with than others. I just slide down the stem and the leaves come off that pretty easily. I just realized I need a jar of water to put these in. While we're over here, I'm going to go ahead and grab a few more. So this one is stiff, I can tell, but also looking at it, I can tell it's just like slightly past its prime. I don't know if that is anything you can notice, but like the center starts to look a little bit larger. The petals just look a little bit less fresh. I don't know how to describe it accurately, but I'm going to do the same thing here and just cut right above that next set of branching. By the way, the leaves I take off and just put into the bed unless there's any sort of fungal issue or disease, then I'll just throw them away, but I just let them decompose in the bed. Another one of my favorite cut and come again flowers are Gomphrena. If you've been here a while, you know I love this plant. And this is actually a very similar process to Zinnias. So I will do a wiggle test. So like this one, you see how that wiggles back and forth quite a bit. Let's find one. So this one here, see how the stem kind of all moves together. And then the exact same as the zinnias, I'm going to go down until I see this branching, and I'm just going to snip it there. And again, if you want to go down further, you can go down to the next set of branching and get a longer stem. Choice is yours. Next up is Statice. Now this is actually one of my favorites to harvest for drying rather than for bouquets, and I am in love with the varieties that I'm growing this year. Now I will say neither of them look exactly how I had envisioned in my head, but I still love the colors that they are. So this one here is the Seeker Rose shades, and then this one is Seeker Pastel Blue. And also, just a note, so last year I had Statice in the garden, and I didn't think it did that great, but that's because I shoved it into way too small a space. So if you don't think you love a plant, same thing happened with the Echinacea. If you've tried a plant, didn't give it enough space, don't think you love it, try giving it more space next year because these are doing so much better. Now knowing when to harvest these is a little bit different. There isn't a wiggle test here, but you basically just want to harvest when the flowers are fully open. And for me, that's when you can see the white on the flowers. And you want to harvest these by going all the way down to the stem at the bottom. So in this case, I'm going to grab this bunch and come all the way down here and snip that off. I know it can be hard to do, especially when these look so pretty, and if you aren't going to use them to dry, you can leave these until the flowers start to fade, and then you can go ahead and just deadhead them. But if you want them to still look pretty in bouquets or once they're dried, you want to harvest them when the flowers still look really pretty. Next up are another one of my favorites, and that is Dahlias, and this Lilac Time is my first official blooming dahlia in the garden. This is earlier than normal, so usually I'd say like mid to end July. Oh, look at that happy little bee. Sorry if I take these from you. Usually it's like mid-July, so having one this early is a nice surprise, but last year especially it was just very delayed, all my dahlias, so having this open now makes me really, really happy. Now dahlias are probably the ones I'm not the best at timing appropriately because they look so pretty that it is really hard for me to cut one, but you want to harvest these when they are almost fully open, which I think this is at a good point right now. So you can see like the center petals are still fairly closed, the ones on the outside are fairly open, and you don't want to wait until like the petals on the outside that open first start to droop or look a little bit sad. So I'm going to grab this right now. And again, similar to Gomphrena or Zinnias, you want to harvest above where you see that branching. I can go lower if I want, a longer stem, but this one is actually a fairly long stem for what I normally see. I can't believe I'm harvesting my first dahlia, but I know, oh, look how cute you are. I know this is what's best for the plant. Oh, it's so pretty. Now I do have some other flowers that are considered cut and come again, but I don't have any flowers on those plants that are ready to harvest right now. So one of those is Cosmos, which I've just had a few opening up here, but I don't tend to use those for bouquets or drying because one, they don't dry great, and two, they don't last very long in bouquets, so I tend to just leave those on the plant to look pretty in the garden and then deadhead when they're kind of past their prime. The other one is Celosia, and this is one of the new ones from Flora. I believe it's Autumn Blaze. I got it from a friend in a seed swap, and these are just starting to bloom, so nothing there ready to harvest yet. But those are some of my cut and come again flowers. So these are definitely not all of the cut and come again flowers in existence, but these are the ones in my garden. I'm probably forgetting a couple, but I'm a gardener who, when I find a plant I really love, like Zinnias or Dahlias, I will then just keep adding more and more varieties every year. I think I'm at like 10, maybe 8 to 10 of Gomphrena now. I started with one. I'm at like 10 plus of Zinnias, started with one. So I really like to just expand upon what I know I love. It just makes my garden, I don't know, the perfect place for me. But I did pull up a list that has a bunch more on it. So this is from Bee Haven Farm. It's a really great article on cut and come again flowers with tips as well. So I'll link it down below. But here is a list for other cut and come again flowers, which maybe you have in your garden and didn't know, because I didn't know cut and come again flowers existed. I thought once you cut the flower off, that was it. And a lot of my friends feel the same way that aren't gardeners. And so when I give them a bouquet, they're like, oh my gosh, you just give me the only like dahlia in your garden. I'm like, no, there will be more coming. You're doing me a favor by allowing me to harvest this. So anyway, here is the list from the Bee Haven site. Calendula, Cerinthe, it says more of a foliage. Cosmos, Dahlias, Nicotiana, Strawflower, I have done that in the past. Statice, Marigold, oh, pansies, which is true. I harvest a lot of pansies for pressing though. Phlox, Drummondii, Rudbeckia. I have Rudbeckia. I don't think it's really started blooming yet, but I do have that in my front deck. Scabiosa, Sweet Peas, Sweet William, branching sunflowers, so mine are all of the single stem. Zinnias, Snapdragons. Did I have Snapdragon seeds? For some reason that sounds familiar. And I think, yeah, that is what they have on their list. But again, I don't think that's a complete list either. So if there's something in your garden and you're not sure if it's cut or come again, Google the name, cut and come again, and see what it says. But do remember that just because something might say it's a cut flower, doesn't mean it's cut and come again flower. So with that, let me actually open up. I feel like I hear, oh, there's a little bee. There's a bee on this Statice that I cut, and oh, I feel bad now that I took it from, but there's plenty left, so I'm not going to feel that bad. So first up in the book of the ones I harvested is the Dahlia, and this again was lilac time. For the Dahlia, it says, Dahlias come in a wide range of colors and textures. In fact, there are more than 60,000 named varieties of this garden favorite. That's the challenge, to grow all 60,000. Availability is late summer to first frost, again, much earlier than normal. I do start mine inside to get them a head start. So I either plant them inside in early April, or if they're the ones I'm storing in our garage, which stays around 40 degrees over winter, I bring them inside in April to get them pre-sprouted. Conditioning tips: Dahlias like cool weather and cold water. Cut the stems with a knife and place them in cold water. Dahlia petals tend to wilt pretty quickly. It is best to spritz the flower directly with water to keep it hydrated. I do notice that Dahlias, when I make bouquets from the flowers in my garden, are one of the first to wilt. Fascinating facts: Dahlias can be found in every color except blue, and yes, breeders are working on trying to create a blue blooming dahlia. These flowers often show their faces on a 90-degree angle, which can make them hard to work with. That is true. So when making a mixed arrangement, put the Dahlias in last. So I think that is interesting. Okay, let's see what the next one is. So next up of the ones it has in here that I have are Gomphrena, and I have in here Rose Gomphrena, and then this is the Lavender Lady Gomphrena, and I do have more varieties, but those are the ones that I harvested. So it says, these globe-shaped clover-like blossoms in shades of purple, red, pink, yellow, and white sit atop upright spikes. These flowers are actually papery bracts or modified leaves. The real flowers grow within these bracts and are barely visible, which I think you can kind of see. Let me take it out so you can see. Like the little yellow specks in there, I think those are the actual flowers. So that's really interesting. I love learning new things. Okay, back to the book. Availability, summer through first frost. Conditioning tips, give these stems a fresh diagonal cut, remove as much foliage as possible, and put them in hot water with plenty of antibacterials. They will keep the flowers from becoming moldy, which is an issue because they last so long. These last very long. So I find, and I think this makes sense, but I find the flowers that work really well as dried flowers, like Gomphrena, Statice, straw flower, they kind of have more of like a papery feel to them. Those last the longest in the bouquets, and I think that makes sense because if they dry really well, when they're sitting in the vase and time's just passing, like even if they're nearing the end of their life, they still look pretty similar to how they look when they're freshly cut. Like when they're dry, they look almost the exact same. So sometimes too, I will put them in bouquets and then take them out and then dry them so they get like dual purpose. So I really like that. Let's see fascinating facts. Gomphrena make good dried flowers because they retain their color and shape when the blooms are completely open but not too old. And you'll notice they get old, they get longer. So again, if I'm paying attention, I do try to harvest when they're more of that round oval shape than when they get super elongated. When the blooms are completely open but not too old, simply cut and hang them upside down in bunches to dry. They can be used on the stems, or the globes can be removed for other projects. As a dried flower, they might just last forever. I have some that are at least 2 years old. I don't know if I have any of like the original batch of Gomphrena. Next, what else do I have? I have my Zinnias and my Statice. And I know that there was one in here, I think it might have been Statice, that wasn't listed that I was kind of sad about, but let's see if I am misremembering that. Oh no, I am misremembering because Statice is in here. Zinnias better be in here, right? Yes, they are. All right, so for the Statice, the bee is done with it. So again, this is the Rose Seeker, and then this is the Seeker Pastel Blue. Really, really pretty colors. Oh, they kind of match with my outfit. So I like these a lot. These are going immediately to be hung upside down to dry inside. So it says, for Statice, clumps of long-lasting, brightly colored, papery flower clusters at the end of Statice's long, sturdy stems. It comes mainly in shades of purple and blue, but it's also available in white, yellow. I had yellow last year, peach. I also had peach last year, pink, and rose. Availability all year. I don't know what that means because they don't grow here all year. Conditioning tips, there's almost no need to condition this flower as it will dry in the same state as when the flower is fresh. Vase life is up to 14 days. Hung upside down in branches, Statice makes a dried flower that will last for years. Fascinating facts. In the language of flowers, Statice is associated with memory and remembrance. Perhaps this is because the flower holds its color for a long time when dried. Put it in as a filler to say, I miss you. And then last of the ones I have is Zinnia, and let me go through, because I harvested a good amount of these, so let me go through the ones that I have. So this is actually one of the Floret Precious Metals. It's a mix, so this one is more of a yellowy pastel. I do have one. Another one of the Floret is that one right in front, that big one. So this is the same Precious Metals, but this one is more of an orangey color. So I'm excited to see, because I have at least 6 or 7 plants, so I'm excited to see which colors I got. This is the Cinderella Lilac Zinnia. This was Cinderella Orange. This was the Queen Lime with Blush. Those are all of them that's in here. This is another of the Cinderella Lilac. Then this is Queen Lime Red. These two are more of the Queen Lime Blush. This is a Queen Lime Orange. And then this was a Queen Lemon Peach. This looks fairly similar to the blush, but it's yellower, and the inside is more of like a, well, it's also just a lighter tone compared to the Queen Lime with Blush. And then this is a Zinnia Envy, which I got because I thought the green of this would go really nicely with the Queen Lime series. So those are all of the zinnias that I harvested. Again, not all, no, I do have some more zinnias that I haven't harvested the varieties of yet. So let's see what the book says about zinnias. These brightly colored flowers bloom from a bushy brush plant belonging to the aster family. I don't think I realized they were in the aster family, but based on the shape, that makes a lot of sense. Flowers vary in size from 1 to 7 inches. I don't think I've ever had one 7 inches. And in form, they might have single, semi-double, or double layered petals. Zinnias come in a wide range of bright colors, including red, purple, lilac, white, yellow, and orange. Availability summer, but mine bloom past summer almost until last frost, again unless powdery mildew kills them. Conditioning tips: zinnias last much better when kept in cold water and not too much, because when the stems are submerged, they tend to rot quickly. Just 2 to 3 inches in a vase will be fine, and change the water often or you will end up with a pile of swampy plant matter. They will last at least 7 days in a vase before starting to look tired. I would say that zinnias are one of my medium length of time lasting in a bouquet, so dahlias definitely are one of the ones that goes first. Same thing with cosmos, that's why I stopped cutting them and using them. Then I'd say zinnias, and then again the Gomphrena and the Statice definitely last the longest. I would say China asters maybe last about the same time as a zinnia, maybe slightly longer. And then for the fascinating facts, it says native to the American Southwest and Mexico, zinnias were once considered small and ugly. Well, that's sad. When the Spanish first saw the flower in Mexico, they named it mal de ojos, or sickness of the eyes. Oh, they're so pretty though. When zinnias were then introduced to Europeans, they became known as a poorhouse flower because they were so common and easy to grow. Don't let that stop you. Zinnias are one of those flowers that florists love the most because they are abundant and hold up very well in the summer. They are best used in rustic style flower arrangements. So I did not know that about zinnias, but I absolutely love them. So yeah, these are all of the flowers that I have cut. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I got another Gomphrena. This is Gomphrena Carmine from that bucket. But these are now all of the cut and come again flowers that I harvested today. Again, I do have other varieties that I just don't have ready to harvest. But I absolutely love these. So definitely add some to your garden if you want flowers that you can use as bouquets throughout the season, but also the plant will continue to make flowers in your garden. Let me know if you have any questions. I will link all the information below and try to list out the varieties that I have. And I will link down that article that had the longer list of different types of cut and come again flowers. But let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.